Hey guys, and welcome back to another Unmentioned 4 tutorial. In today's video I'm going to be going over setting up a multiplayer downed and revival system. So if I were to hit play, I can show you what we're going to make today. You can see I have two players just in the game right now, and if I walk into this box you can see that my health is going to go down, and when it reaches 0 I'm going to get knocked down and downed on the floor and my health is slowly going down. Now if I change to the other player, you can see that if I go over to it and press E, I'm going to start reviving them, the health is paused, and then I can revive them. Their health goes back to a default set health, which we can set when they are revived, and now everything is back to normal with them being revived. And this works for both server and client as well, so if I were to knock this one down and then revive him, you can see what happens, and also we can stop reviving halfway through if we want, so I can do that, which also works perfectly, and I can also let this one die to see what happens. Let me revive it first to show you that it works both ways, and then I'll just let one of them die to show you what happens if we don't revive them in time. So any second now they should probably die because we didn't revive them, and there you go. All I've got at the moment is simply it just goes down, but you can do whatever you like really when they do die. So this is what we're going to be setting up today. Again, a nice little multiplayer downed and revival system which you can use in any of your games. So this is what we made today. So without further ado, let me do this code and show you how I've done it. So the first thing we want to do is we want to set up the animations. So I'll leave a link in the description down below to the animations which I'm using, and they're just off of nextmo.com. I've got crawling forwards, downed idle, and reviving. So again, use whichever animations you want, but these are the ones which I'm going to be using. And then we're going to set up an animation blend space. And then we're going to set up an animation blend space so we can go from idle to crawling nice and smoothly. So let's right click, go to animation, and go to anim blend space 1D like so, selecting the skeleton which you're using for your character, which for me is the UE4 mannequin skeleton. Then we're going to name this to whatever we want, which for me, downed BS for blend space is going to work perfectly. I'm going to open that up straight away. In here, I'm going to change the horizontal axis name to be speed, with a minimum value of 0, and the maximum being the max speed the player is going to be able to go when they are downed, which for me, I'm going to set it to be 300. So that is going to be half of my normal walking speed. Again, set that to whatever you like. Then if I go to the asset browser in the bottom right, I can simply drag in my animations which I have. So again, I have downed idle, which is going to go all the way on the left at speed 0, and crawling forward, which is going to go all the way on the right on speed 300. And if we hold down left shift, we can see we can drag this green dot here to get a preview of what's going to happen. So at 0 speed, it's idle, which isn't really an animation for me, it's just a pose pretty much. And if I move it to the right, it's going to be crawling forwards like so. So that is what we're going to be making today. Again, working perfectly. Now I can save and close that, as that's all we need to do in the blend space, like so. And then we need to set up using this in our animation blueprint. So I'm going to go to Content, Mannequin, Animations, and Third Person and MVP, as that is the one which I am using, but again, use whichever one it is for you and your character. And I'm going to go straight into the state machine as we see here. I only want to be able to enter this when we are idle or running, not while we're jumping. So I'm going to drag out of my idle run state and add a new state, naming this downed. And I'm going to drag an arrow from downed back to idle run as well, so we can go in between these two like so. Then double click downed state to open it up, dragging in our downed BS or downed blend space we just made, to again go between idle and moving. You can see here we also have the speed horizontal axis, which we need to input a variable in. And I do already have the speed variable set up here, which I'm just going to straight input into there. Now you should also have this, and if you don't, then I do have different videos on setting up an animation blueprint if you need to go watch that. So we'll compile, save, and you can see we've got some errors, and that's because we haven't finished up the transitional lines yet, so we're going to do that now. So let's first off open up the idle run to downed, which is the arrow going up, like so. What I'm going to do in here is create a new variable, so I'm going to right click, canon to transition, promote to variable, and I'm going to name this one is downed, ? And that can just be connected straight up into there. So if downed equals true, so if downed is true, then we can enter the downed state and play that animation. Then downed back to idle run, we just want to do the opposite. So if downed is false. So we're going to get is downed and get a not boolean, connecting that into there. So if downed is not true, then it's going to enter back from the downed state into our normal idle run state. So whenever we just set this boolean to be true or false, it's going to determine when we're playing these animations. Now we can do it slightly differently, so in here what we could also do is get a blend poses by bool, connecting that into there, with the active value being is downed, true being our downed blend space, and false being our normal idle run blend space. So you can do that as well. It's just personal preference of which one you prefer, and I'm going to set this one up as well. So again, just choose whichever one you prefer to do. Either one works perfectly fine. Since I've already set the other one up, I'm just going to delete this and connect that back into there like so. So we'll compile and save that. And while we're in the animation blueprint as well, what I'll also do is go over back to just the anim graph, come out to the state machine and get a slot default slot. Now this is something we're going to need to use in the next video, because I'm going to split this video up into two parts. So the next video we're going to be using animation montages, which means we're going to need a slot default slot in here, but I thought I may as well just do it now since we're in the animation blueprint. But this is all we need to do in here. So we've set up the transitions going between our normal idle run blend space to our downed blend space as well. So we can compile, save, and close this like so. And next up, we want to open up our character blueprint, which for me is the third person BP. Blueprint's third person character, but again for you it could be third, first, or whatever you've named it. Now the first thing we want to do in here is we want to create a reference to our animation blueprint so we can access that variable which we just set up of isDowned. So I'm going to be doing that off of event begin play, which I have here. I'm using a sequence because on then 0 I'm creating my HUD widget just to display my health. So again, you can use a sequence if you want it as well. But just come off of event begin play and cast to your third person anim BP. So for me, again, that is cast to third person anim BP, but for you it will just be the animation blueprint which you are using for your character. And we're going to right click as third person anim BP, promote to variable, naming this anim BP reference, like so. So that way we can now access the reference of our animation blueprint anywhere we want in the code. But what's the object going to be for casting to an animation blueprint? Well, very simply, we just want to get the animation instance of our mesh, because the anim instance is the animation blueprint we're using. So we can just drag and drop in our skeletal mesh here, by default named mesh. Out of this, we're going to get anim instance, connecting that into the object of the cast, like so. And that is very simply how we're going to cast to an animation blueprint, as you can see here. So we'll compile and save that, and we've now got an animation blueprint reference set up to use later on. So now we're going to actually set up the damaging part. So the player is getting damaged, and once they've taken enough damage, they're going to get downed. The main part of the video, let's start setting that up now. So we're going to scroll down to find some empty space so we can write some code, because we're going to need quite a bit of space for this. So first off, we're going to right click, and we're going to get some custom events, because obviously we need to replicate this, so we're going to use replicated custom events. So we're going to right click and add a custom event, naming this one damage on client. And we're going to add an input to this, giving this an input named damage, and that's going to be a float value. Also make sure that we set it to be replicated on multicast, as this is for the client. It needs to execute on all. I'm going to drag this down just a little bit more. Above this, I'm going to right click, add another custom event, naming this damage on server. Again, giving that another input of a float named damage, so we can determine how much damage we are giving the player. And again, this one's replicated to run on server this time, so execute on server. Then out of this, we're going to call the function of damage on client, connecting up the two different damage variables we have there. And then above this, we're going to right click and add event any damage, that going into a call function damage on server, again connecting the damages in there like so. So what happens is when we want to damage the player, we're going to call the function event any damage, and we're going to be doing that by simply applying damage, which calls this. The damage we want to apply is going to go into a custom event for damaging on the server, which will run that on the server, which will then call the damage on client, which will obviously run it on the client, and this here is then when we're going to do the rest of the code for actually damaging the player. So let's set that up now. This is now how we've replicated it, so any code we do off of this is going to be replicated perfectly how we want. So let's first set up some more variables. So we're going to hit the plus variable here, and I'm going to name this one health, like so, and I'm going to change this to also be a float, and I'm going to compile it, and I'm going to give it a default value of 75. Actually, I'll make it a little bit lower just for the purpose of the tutorial, so I'll say 35, that way I can make sure the player dies quickly, just so we can show it off easier. Then I'm going to create another variable, naming this one downed health, because we want the player to have two different health bars, one for when they're normally alive, and the second for when they are then downed. So make sure you do that as well, again keeping it as a float, given the default value of this to be 100, or just the maximum health you want the player to have while downed. And then underneath this custom event we have here, we're going to get the health and also get the downed health. Because what we want to do is we want to determine which health we need to subtract from. So when the player is getting damaged while they're alive, we want to subtract the normal health. But when the player is getting damaged while they're downed, we want to subtract the downed health. So a nice and easy way to determine which one to subtract from is come out of health and get a select float. A being health, B being downed health. And as you can see, we have a Boolean value here of pick A. To determine what that is going to be, is we're just going to then use the variable which we made of is downed. So to access that, we can get our AnimBP reference here, drag out of this and get is downed, like so. Out of this, get a not Boolean, connecting that into the pick A. So if is downed is not true, we're going to pick A, meaning we're going to subtract from the normal health. So I hope that one makes sense for you. And then we're going to come out of the return value of the select float, so whichever health we are now damaging, and we're going to get a float minus a float, making sure it goes into the top value, and the bottom value is going to be the normal damage from the damage on client custom event we have there. I'm just going to drag this out a little bit, like so. So again, what we're doing is we're taking the damage away from whichever health bar we want to take damage from. And this float minus a float is going to go into a clamp float, like so. And the minimum is going to be 0, so that way the health can't go below 0. And the maximum for me is going to be 100, or just whatever your max health is. So now that we've actually damaged the player, that's what we're doing here, is we're doing health or downed health minus the amount of damage. We want to see if they're downed. So again, which health we are actually going to decrease from. Because this is decreasing the health, but then we also need to make sure we set the health as well, don't we? So we're going to hold down B, left click to get a branch, connecting that into the damage on client. And the condition for this is going to again be this AnimBP reference is downed, not Boolean there, like so. So I'm just going to copy and paste that up here, connecting that into the branch. So again, if the player is or isn't downed. So true means they're not downed, so we're going to set health off of true, and false means they are downed, so we're going to set the downed health off of false. And then we can simply connect up the return value of that clamp float into these two values here. I'm just going to use some rewrite nodes to keep them nice and organized. So I hope that makes sense for you. So again, we are just decreasing the health or the downed health depending on whether or not the player is downed or alive. And now we want to see if the player is going to be dead, so if their health has reached 0. So to do that, what we need to do is again get another select float. So we're going to come out of the top health and get select float, A being health, B being downed health. Once again, pick A, it's going to be AnimBP is downed, not, connected up into there. And then the return value of this is going to go into an equal float, making sure it's just equal to 0. So if the health or downed health is equal to 0. This is then obviously going to go into a branch, so hold down B, left click to get a branch, condition being that equal integer there, and the execution is going to be both into the set health and set downed health, like so. So we're going to be checking to see whether or not the health or downed health is equal to 0, regardless of which one we are setting. So now we know whether or not the player is going to be dead, or if their health is 0 and want to be downed. So if it's false and they're not dead, I don't really want to do anything. You can obviously do something there if you want, for example, play a sound effect or something, but I'm not going to bother. I'm just going to come out of true, so if they are dead. So out of true, I then want to see if they're downed, because if they are downed, we want to then kill them fully, but if they're not downed, we just want to down them. So we're going to hold down B, left click to get another branch, connecting that into true, and the condition is again going to be AnimBP reference is downed. There's no not this time, it's just is downed. And again, true, I want to kill the player. So what I'm going to do is just disable the player's movement so they can no longer move. So disable movement from the character movement. And again, for me, when they die, all I'm going to do at the moment is just enable ragdoll, which is a function I made earlier, which I do have different videos going over how to do this, but simply just set simulate physics true for the mesh. So that is how I'm killing the player. You can obviously go into more detail on that if you wanted to. Then off of false, they're not downed and they've now just died. We want to actually down them. So they don't die fully just yet, they get downed so they have a chance to be revived. So what we're going to do is get the AnimBP reference, and this time we're going to set is downed. So not get, we're now setting is downed, so we know whether or not the player is downed, so we can then use the animations properly and also again determine all this other code we've just set up. So we want to make sure we tick is downed to set it to true. Then I'm going to get the character movement and set the max walk speed. So again, I can just slow down the player so they move slower when they are downed. Again, for me, setting it to 300. And what I'm also doing is I want to make sure that the player can't jump when they are downed. So I'm going to set a new Boolean value of can jump to be false as well. So again, you can create this if you want to, it's not necessary, but I have. So create a Boolean value named can jump with a default value of true, and then set it to false here. And then go to your jump code, which you have by default, and simply do this here. So check the Boolean value of can jump, and it has to be true to go into jump, like so. And then what we also want to do is we want to make sure that while the player is downed, we're going to be damaging them as well, so they are going to be slowly losing health while they're downed. So out of can jump, I'm going to apply damage like so. And this is the node which we use to call this function over here to apply damage, to damage on server, to damage on client, to then call all of this code which we've just set up here. And the base damage I'm going to set to be 10, so they're taking 10 damage every time. Set that up to be whatever you want. And the damaged actor, we're just going to do self. So this actor is the one being damaged. Then we're going to hold down D, left click to get a delay. But the duration for me is going to be 2.5. So every 2.5 seconds, the player is taking 10 damage. And then after this, we want to loop it. But we only want to loop it if they are still downed. So we're going to hold down B, left click to get a branch. And the condition is going to be anim BP reference is downed. So again, only if the player is downed, they're going to continue taking damage. That goes into the condition like so. So false does nothing, that just breaks the loop. True is going to actually do the loop. So we're just going to drag it back into apply damage like so. And again, I'm going to get some router nodes to keep it looking nice and organized. So that now at the very end is our damage loop to make sure the player is actually taking damage while they are knocked down. And that is the code all set up for us. So we can compile and save, and that is it done. What I'm also going to actually do is set is downed when they die to be false as well, so they're no longer downed when they're dead, so we can't actually then revive them. So I've just thought if we set it to false here, that means the player can't be revived once they've died. So I hope that makes sense as well. So we'll compile and save that. Again, this is the code done. So what we're going to do is when they take damage, it's all replicated, so it will work on multiplayer. Then if they're not downed, we're going to decrease their normal health by however much we decide. And then if that's equal to 0 when they take enough damage, they're going to then be downed. And when they take damage, if they are downed, we're going to decrease their downed health. And when that equals 0, they're going to die. And while it isn't 0, their health is going to be going down even further. So I hope that all makes sense. So we'll compile, save, and close that. And I'll show you it working in a second. I just want to show you some other stuff first. For example, this box here, which I'm using to damage the player, all I'm simply doing is begin overlap, apply damage to the player which overlapped it with a base damage of 10. So again, this is how we actually use the functions we just made. We use the apply damage node. And also for my HUD, what I've got is, let me open it up here, wherever I put it. Here it is. So what I've got is just a progress bar, very simple. However, I'm using again a select float with the is downed as pick A. So I can then change it between the health and downed health for my progress bar so it displays both of them when it is necessary to. So again, I'd recommend doing that as well so that when the player is downed, they can see the downed health. And you can maybe even change the color depending on if they're downed or not, just to make it easier for the player to understand as well. So we're going to close this and hit play to test this out. So you can see at the moment I have 0 health, and I imagine I probably forgot to set the default value for my health. Well, it seems to be working now, so I'm not sure what that was. I haven't changed anything, but here we are. So again, let's test this out now. So if I were to walk into this box, you see my health is going down, and when it reaches 0, we're going to simply be downed like so, and our health is also going down as well. Now again, we haven't set up revival yet. We're going to do that in part 2, probably tomorrow or the day after, and in that one we are going to be able to revive the other player, like so. If we go up to it and press E, we'll be able to revive it, but not at the moment. But so far we should also be able to die when our health runs out. So I think that'll be it for this video. So we've done everything we want to do. As you saw there, the player just died once their health reached 0. But again, what we've set up is a nice simple system. So far the player can be downed when they take enough damage, and when they are downed, the player's health is going to go down periodically as well until they die if they don't get revived, which again, revival will be set up in the next video. And as well, this is all replicated and ready for multiplayer as well. As you can see, it is working for me with a server and a client. So thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed and I hope you found it helpful. And if you did, make sure to like and subscribe down below. So thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.